Is the unnamed tavern named unnamed tavern? Is unnamed tavern named unnamed tavern, or is it a tavern that's not been named?
Good. All right, so we've
Yes.
got Trump. So the thing
Of
with
course.
of course, the thing with the with Trump is that it just keeps escalating. You know what I mean? Like it's just more and more just keeps getting added on top of it. So I've noticed that it's kind of hard to keep track of it. So I do have this link here that I'm putting for people. And if you go over here, it's basically that they made a list of their own works that have kind of been tracking everything. So, like, this is January 6th in the 2020 election aftermath. This one's the classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. They've got one for the electoral tampering in Georgia, which we talked about last time. Stormy Daniels, hush money, business fraud in New York. This one is just about this lady for the Supreme Court. And then there was that other Supreme Court judge that was caught with all of the with all the gifts and stuff that he was getting.
Yes.
That was crazy. Did you guys see that?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so I think one of the things I see that Trump operates on is he wants to be a center of attention, right? I think it's part of his narcissistic tendencies, and to some extent, it doesn't seem like he minds whether the attention is negative or positive. What do you think?
No, I agree. He
Yeah,
wants
that
to be the
sounds
center. He would prefer positive attention, I think. But ultimately, if that's not what he's getting, but it's still attention, I think it's good enough for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clarence
and,
Thomas.
and
Yeah.
and so the thing right now, the other thing that's operating really is this cult of personality. And in a cult of personality, like any cults, logic is very difficult to penetrate, right? To go to a cult member and say your cult is bad because of blah blah blah, that just shows they're being persecuted by the evil people, and it just almost validates
Well, if
themselves.
Danny Masterson has anything to say about it, then it's really easy to penetrate people as long as you're in the cult.
So
Yeah,
so
that's true.
in some sense, people that are not in, let's say, the Trump, let's call it MAGA cult, would see how could anyone follow this person, and people in the cult say this is proof that Trump is special, is
He's
this
the
wonderful
most
person because he's been
president I've ever.
persecuted by the evil people.
Yeah, of course. The big bad people.
Yep. It's definitely not possible that he's actually done bad things that deserve legal consequences. Not an option.
Yeah, but some of the you hear conversations and talking to some of the MAGA cult followers who say they don't mind, they don't care if Trump has done anything bad, because they'll say, well, but everyone's done something bad, right? No one's perfect, but they see they see the all these legal things, and there's a bunch of stuff. Chesh listed some of the top things, but there's a bunch of other things that are happening. They see that as proof that Trump is on the right track because the evil people are persecuting him, and their cults operate on that us them type of mentality.
Well, it's one of those things where I'm curious to know how much his like desperation for money comes into this as well. Because like he has lived previously a rather lavish lifestyle, and that's expensive to maintain. And like between all of the legal troubles and how much that like money that is, let alone that if you take any look at his tax records or any of the financial issues that he's gone through, I don't think he has real money. So the only way for him to maintain relevance and make any money at this point is to do what he's been doing. And Savage Cobra in the chat for 5 said, there's a strong correlation between most corrupt president and most prosecuted former president.
Yeah, those things do tend to go hand in hand.
So understand that that from a point of view of a cult member, they see the arrests and the trials as validation that Trump is doing the proper thing. And they will even go to the point of forgiving Trump for stuff he might have done. And so trying to show somebody, look, bad thing that Trump has done, just proves to them that you're on the other side. You're part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we go through and look through, this was the link that you gave me, Landon, not long before we were going live, and it says the pattern of threats made to the targets of former President Donald Trump has been outlined in a federal court filing asking for a gag order against the ex-president. Special counsel Jack Smith asked U.S. District Judge Tanya, is it Tanya? I'm assuming.
I think,
to apply,
Tanya Chutkin.
to apply a narrowly tailored gag order to Trump in a motion filed on Friday. So this is just this past Friday. Chutkin is overseeing Trump's case on 4 felony charges related to 2020 presidential election interference and the January 6th attacks on the U.S. Capitol. Trump has pleaded not guilty to all the charges, of course he has, and claims to be the victim of a witch hunt. So the thing is, right, is that I find this very interesting that they specify that the gag order is to be narrowly tailored. And I think that's a thing to demonstrate that they're, to say that, like, hey, listen, we're not trying to silence him, but he can't be instigating violence against people.
Yeah, basically.
I think so. That's how the January 6th events happened, didn't they? Like, he was inciting people, and I think so. It's good that the order that they're trying to implement is narrowly defined, because we know that Trump is capable of talking in riddles and in, what do you say?
Yeah. And one of the things that
unrelated language,
really
and people are ready to just read between the lines and go for it. That's exactly what happened on January 6th.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Inciting.
One of the big things I want to point out with this too is that this is actually pretty common in criminal prosecutions in the United States, right? Most criminal defendants are told there are certain things you simply can't talk about or say relating to this case. And you can say, oh, well, my First Amendment rights. Hey, guess what? There are curtailments to your right to free speech that occur and have been widely upheld by the legal system, including the Supreme Court. And it includes not being allowed to discuss certain types of evidence in criminal cases, to threaten jurors or potential jurors, witnesses, prosecutors, judges. These are all things that you are generally not allowed to do. And quite frankly, this is still Trump being treated with kid gloves, because virtually any other defendant who had Trump's history on social media would have been immediately slapped with a pretty expansive gag order. And also almost certainly not just released of his own recognizance. That's ridiculous. Former President Trump might actually be one of the more dangerous criminal defendants in the United States currently, given his demonstrated ability to inspire other people to violence or further criminal activity based on his words, and the fact that he has been in no way conducting himself within the bounds of basically the law in terms of not intimidating witnesses, court officials, or potential jurors. He's been doing all of these things. If I had been accused of any of the things that Trump has been accused of, and then done what he has done on my social media, I would currently be sitting in jail. There is no question about this. So as much as people who are Trump fans, or Trump himself is going to be saying things like, this is unfair, I'm being treated worse than anyone ever has been in the history of the world, none of it's true. He is still being treated with kid gloves at this point.
Oh, and it's as if like he's getting being treated with some sort of privilege, that's not afforded to others.
And I want to say I do appreciate the attempt to bring him to heel in terms of the legal requirements of being a defendant in a case. To me, it's becoming a little too late, because one of the things about this whole prosecution is, in addition to being the prosecution of a very, very likely criminal president, I guess I can't say for certain because technically it hasn't been, decided on in the courts, but it's also been an attempt to say that, the United States doesn't have a 2-tier legal system. There's one set of rules for everyone. Well, But the thing is that you treating this one guy with these kid gloves the whole time is just reinforcing that there's a two-tier system, and that even the upper tier does have lines that they're not supposed to cross, and that if they do, they might get punished. But it has done nothing to alleviate the concern in the United States that there is, in fact, a two-tier legal system. Because, quite frankly, I mean, there is, right? If Landon had gotten together a group of people and used them to attack the Capitol building in Washington, he would be in prison or in jail from that day until his conviction, and then he would be in prison for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
That's what would have happened.
And there is an irony that one of the charges, one of the types of charges that Trump is facing is the RICO statute, right? Racketeering. And one of the things that the modern version of those things were omitted to address is organized crime, where the criminal boss wouldn't necessarily directly give the order to cause problems or harm to somebody or threaten. They would just let it be known that they are displeased, and the underlings would go about, doing the business. And it's a real peril right now for people that have been subpoenaed, that are ordered to stand trial, that Trump can then turn around and let it be known that he says they shouldn't testify.
Yeah.
And
just like a mafia
that
or
person now has to get bodyguards and protection, because the cult members see that individual who's being forced to testify as being part of the evil people that needs to be addressed. And the dehumanization of MAGA against the non-MAGA people. You hear the language. They talk about people being, baby killers and subhuman and that sort of stuff. Is all part of the scheme of taking those people and turning them into non-humans so that can be squashed, right? And so the concern that's being addressed is witness intimidation, or even witness being silenced by folks. There are some very significant security problems that are being created, and it's a shame that we haven't yet had a judge that basically has hauled Trump in and said, look, because there's a statement might be that I want you to announce to your followers to lay off the witnesses.
Yeah.
Right? Because Trump has created this scheme that anyone who's involved, even somebody who is like a court reporter, because they're now part of the evil news establishment, or somebody who is merely supplying security services, becomes a target, right? These are the MAGA people taking pictures and then doxing the person and then going to the school of their kids and so forth. It is a really significant threat.
That's happened with the parents of the Parkland shooters, hasn't it? Alex Jones has incited mobs against them that parents have had to move in order to protect themselves. And if American judicial system hasn't learned anything from that, and focus on Trump in that way, they are, in my opinion, they're committing a huge mistake here. They need to really make it tell Trump that, listen, if you don't comply with these rules, we are going to throw the book at you and you won't know what's coming.
They have to.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen.
They also have to be really, really careful and really, really specific about the way they go about it. They have to be so careful in their wording. They have to be so careful to not even look like they're overstepping. That's why it says that's why it's so specific in saying a very limited gag order. Because if they run around and say, because what's Trump and the MAGA group gonna do? They're going to say, oh, look, they're trying to silence Trump. They gave him a gag order. They're literally there's going to be pictures everywhere of Trump with stupid tape over his mouth. And it's just make America great again. There's going to be duct tape that's going to come out that's going to say make America great again and sectioned off. That's going to be toilet paper and shit.
MAGA has changed what the acronym stands for.
Oh,
it now no longer stands for making America great again or make America great again. It now stands for making attorneys get attorneys. This is just how many of Trump's lawyers have been charged with crimes.
So in my book, the thing that I I believe is that Trump is worthy of being indicted, given what I know of it, and that I wanted Trump to be brought to justice. And by the way, when I say brought to justice, I don't mean convicted. I mean what's happening now, which is I want Trump to have to face courts, because I'm willing to accept what the court does. I may not like what the court does, but unlike people who don't care about the rule of law, if the court acquit Trump on all the charges of all the things, so be it, right? I'll be surprised, but I'll accept that. The thing that I understand is that the court systems, the justice grinds slowly. So I did not expect that the courts to hammer Trump for his behavior now, but you're seeing the beginnings of that process. Because why? Because Trump has not been silenced. His attorneys have tried to keep him from sabotaging the case, but they have a hard time doing that.
Robert in the chat said, "MAGA, my ass got arrested."
So one of the things about this, though, is that I think that there's currently an incipient, I'll say, crisis of lack of confidence in the American judicial system, and for very good reason, right? Like, we have one of the most corrupt imaginable judges sitting on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Well, look, there's good reason to have a lack of confidence, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Like, I thought you meant there was a... Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, so we have a justice on the Supreme Court who's been in, a big player for decades now, who it turns out has been taking bribes left and right, whose wife should probably be charged with some pretty serious crimes on the grounds that, she was one of the people participating in the coup. We have a former president who, okay, let's be honest here. I'm not on the jury. I'm not going to be on the jury. I'm not bound by innocent until guilty. Yeah. Trump is fucking guilty of basically everything he's been charged with, and you would have to be blind to not realize that, right? He said it openly. Yep. He has admitted to his crimes in open on the goddamn news repeatedly, right?
Yeah.
And so we have this situation where we have a former president who's openly admitting to crimes, a justice who has been taking bribes, and I and a lot of other people are looking around and saying, what is this?
Yeah.
In what way is the rule of law operating in the United States? And the thing is, I feel like unless there are consequences for both Trump very soon and for Justice Thomas, that the United States people will stop having faith that the judicial system has anything to do with justice, and that's a problem, right? Once the populace at large decides that the courts don't matter, that's not a great way to run a country. That's going to make things worse.
The courts are not about what's fair or what's just. They're about coming to a resolution. And anyone who's been in the court system and subject to that can tell you that you can't just simply assume if you're innocent, you'll be found not guilty, or if you're guilty, you'll be found, you can't assume that's the case, because the courts have never really been about that.
That's true.
The courts have always supposed to have been about whether or not they follow the letter of the law, or whether or not there needs to be adjustments to the law. But if you have too many corrupt officials that are changing those laws, and too many corrupt officials that are trying to administer that reading of the law, it will eventually break down because it will lack consistency. And as soon as it lacks consistency and people lose faith in it, then what are people going to do? What's the natural result of that?
And I would expect if Trump is convicted, then part of the MAGA cult will then say, we got to get rid of the courts because they're bad, right?
That's almost certainly true, which is another problem. One of the problems is I think that no matter what happens, there's going to be a significant segment of the population that feels like this is evidence of a failure of the government as such, and not just a failure of this current administration or the current group of judges, but that it's a failure of the institution per se. And I don't know how to argue that the institution isn't failing. And that's troublesome to me because, well, on the one hand, I've never been exactly something you would call a fan of the United States government. I mean, they do a lot of shitty things to a lot of people who don't deserve it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that every country does this, right? Every country has a central, ultimately, fiction on which they base their ability to administer laws, courts, pass laws, prosecute wars, all these things, right? And in the United States, it has always been two things. One is that there is a consent from the governed, and that one's always been a little bit shaky because of how many people are like, do I consent? And the number of people who are actually listened to when they say they don't has always been zero. But the other one that the United States has always used as one of its central fictions to prop itself up as a legitimate government has always been like, well, the United States isn't a place where we have noblemen and commoners. Everyone is subject to the same rules. And when you take away the foundational myths or fictions that a government uses to maintain its legitimacy, that's when things get very dangerous in terms of things like coups and revolutions. And I would rather not live through another coup, but if the United States government can't maintain its legitimacy, that might be what happens. And I would prefer
I think
not.
so. I think so.
So
What
Dapper, I would
Republicans
suggest
have to realize. I think so. What Republicans who have supported Trump have to realize that the direction they're moving towards is not productive for them either. It might look profitable for them for some time, but after later, when the poison starts infecting you, right? So it's gonna come for them too later. So they might think that they're going to get benefits, but those benefits, the net loss that they're going to face with in regards to losing people's trust, and regard and everything, that's a huge risk, a huge gamble to take, especially when their most veteran leaders like Mitch McConnell, etc., they are on the verge of like moving out of out of the politics, right? We have seen them like they are not fit to be involved in politics anymore, and there are these they're veteran politicians who knew how to toe the line and how to like keep everybody in check, and they're getting out of these politics, and you've got a younger generation of Republicans coming in who are not qualified, who are not experienced, and who don't care as long as they gain as long as they profit of whatever the narrative is at the moment. So the Republican Party is playing a very risky game in next 5 years. In next 5 years, they're playing a very risky game, and the conservatives and Republicans who support these newbies who are coming in, they have to realize this is not good. This is not good for democracy. This is not good for Republicans, Democrats, the whole
it's not good for
the
them
Constitution of the United
maintaining the status quo.
Yes, the status quo.
So
it's not good.
So the history of the United States, I don't see Dapper things, has been we've had periods of time where the government has become extremely dysfunctional and extremely divided. And then what happens sometimes?
I would rather say we've had periods of time when the government has been minimally functional. That has occasionally happened.
Yes. But on the other hand, what happens sometimes is we have crises, like a war or a calamity, that changes the narrative. As maybe it just even distracts people, right? So the result is that there are people see the crises as being something that Americans came together and overcame, and then people feel good, forgetting the thing that happened beforehand, that the crises basically took headlines away. So this notion of the American government is failing and going to collapse, I would suspect, if you look at the historical pattern, something's going to happen that's going to distract the public and send us in a different direction.
I don't think that I would predict a collapse of the United States government. However, what I do think will happen is that if there continues to be a lack of appearance of maintaining sort of the fiction of the United States government, that it will increase things like civil unrest in cases when it might not otherwise have gotten to the extreme that it did. And when I say that, I don't just mean like protests outside of Capitol building. I mean like riots and looting. I think it will decrease the likelihood of people taking things like jury duty seriously, right? Like, why should I take this seriously if the government doesn't take the whole idea of a court seriously?
Yeah, if the whole thing's a joke, then why is anybody gonna care about the
crises,
upholding of law?
Look,
if you keep in mind also on top of that, if you add in things like Black Lives Matter and you add in the number of strikes that are going on, like worker strikes. So like the worker strikes on top of no longer taking the government seriously and on top of massive amounts of poverty and so many people facing homelessness, like all of these things are just going to escalate and escalate and escalate, and after one thing after another, it's not historically unlikely for like a very large war to kind of almost reset the quo. Yeah. Like that certainly happened around the time of the Great Depression. It's not unheard of. But is it likely to happen right now? And right now, what would that war even look like? Because it's not like we're anywhere close to what World War II
natural disaster.
Was like. A natural disaster, essentially, yeah.
I don't think we're going to be seeing World War III.
A natural disaster. And it doesn't have to be a world war. It just has to be a war that garners enough of the Americans' attention, like the American people's attention.
Now, that could just happen.
Look at what happened in the 1960s, where we had leaders being assassinated. We had significant riots in the streets. We had significant groups of people being disenfranchised. And we had a corruption system and a terrible war going on. You can go back to decades and find stuff. If you don't think of it through rose-colored glasses, you'll find that society has had these problems. And we've seen a shift between almost despair, dysfunctional, to something happening that changes the attention. And restores.
And then it's just a matter of a couple of. Then you get suddenly you now have a leader that people trust and people believe in, no matter what it is that policies that they're doing or what it is that they're putting forward, right? Because they're doing for what is best for the country. Because if they don't, or if it seems like they don't, that it ends up being greatly, greatly detrimental to the country overall, and everybody's kind of united in like this one set of causes. And so like it's just a matter of like the resetting the mindset of the public, because like it's not like the CIA hasn't done that 17 times over the course of American history.
Yeah.
Or they don't have the potential or the ability to do that, right?
I mean, to the Americans that are out there, one of the things I want to say is essentially you should pay attention, and participate. Try not to participate in the extremes, right? The MAGA extremes and anti-MAGA extremes are part of the problem. One of the things that's also been happening is there's been bots from other countries that try to incite anger and hatred and so forth to stir stuff up. But for the Americans, instead they're thinking, well, if Trump gets elected, I'm going to move to Canada. First of all, let me say, what makes you think Canada would want you?
Yeah.
Second thing, what makes you think that Canada is any better? Right? They're a bunch of people.
Yeah.
They have problems. They have issues. They have their MAGA people. They have their stuff. So it's not necessarily the other side of the ditch, Trudeau's ditch. Is better, right? So don't think, well, I'll just move to Canada.
It ultimately really just depends on which policy you're looking at and where you're looking in Canada. That's all it is. If you're moving specifically because you're a trans person who feels threatened, then you need to make sure that where you move in Canada is going to matter. Do you want to move from Nevada to the Texas of Canada? Probably not. Do you want to
Don't go to Calgary.
Don't go to Calgary. Like, that's not where you want to move.
Go to Edmonton.
Right? There's a lot of rural areas in Canada that have the same kind of lack of exploration or a lack of exposure to people who are different than they are. And so the people that live there tend to struggle with those types of things. Even if you go just 3 hours north of like Toronto, you start to see it start to move up. There's a reason why Ontario, which has Toronto in it and has the majority of the people who live in those areas are liberal, is a consistently conservative province. And it's because everybody who lives up north is an asshole.
Anything 3 hours north of the border is too cold for human habitation anyway.
Well, I mean, North Bay exists.
So I think
Thunderbait.
Americans
I maintain my statement.
I understand, that again, the systems are under stress, right? And the legal system's under stress. To some extent, part of the thing is that you probably have naive notion that the court has anything to do with justice or law or fairness, right? Just that hasn't been the case for a couple of centuries. But still, the thing that I concern about is that the MAGA group is going to cause problems if they get into power, right? Trump has made it very clear he plans on retribution. And if they don't get into power, they're going to be trouble to pay. So the society has some significant problems. With regards to Clarence Thomas, in my opinion, Clarence Thomas is the least qualified member of the Supreme Court the United States has ever had. The man is judicially an idiot. And his clerks are the ones that write his stuff. There's a reason why he doesn't talk very much on the Supreme Court or ask questions. In fact, when he does, it's news. Is because he is functionally, in a legal sense, an idiot. And one of my proud moments was to tell Bush Sr. that I thought his greatest failure or legacy was having appointed Thomas. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said it respectfully. So what do you mean? He said, well,
just throw it casually, I talked to Bush.
A century now, people will look at Thomas and his Supreme Court tenure and say, my God, what an idiot, right? And you will be the one that put him there, right? Someone like, let's say, again, and this is not an anti Thomas thing for his philosophy. For example, had, let's say, Bork become the justice rather than Thomas, at least you have some level of consistency and some attempt to rigor of his arguments. I don't agree with Bork, but Thomas you can't disagree with because it's not his clerks, and he's just in it for the I don't know.